Beyond the Gates spoilers full episodes Wednesday update. Power does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it announces itself quietly, through a decision made before anyone else dares to look directly at the truth. On Tuesday's episode of Beyond the Gates, the balance inside Fairmount Crest begins to shift not because of an explosion or a public scandal, but because Anita Dupree refuses to surrender control over her own body, her family, and the narrative surrounding her illness. While whispers spread through the gated community and fear hangs in the air like a breath held too long, Anita chooses action over waiting, clarity over denial, and strength over silence, setting off a chain reaction that reaches far beyond her own reflection in the mirror. Anita has always understood power as something internal before it ever becomes visible. The moment she notices the first strands of hair resting against her shoulder, she does not panic, nor does she retreat into privacy. The loss is not merely physical, it is symbolic, a reminder that chemotherapy is not an abstract battle happening inside her body but a force already making itself known to the outside world. Rather than allowing time to strip pieces of her away inch by inch, Anita decides to reclaim the moment on her own terms. This choice is not about vanity or appearances, it is about agency. By cutting or shaving her hair before it can fall without permission, she sends a clear message to herself and to anyone watching closely that illness will not dictate how or when she confronts change. Donnie Dupree's presence during this moment is not accidental. Anita shares this decision with her not out of weakness, but because she understands that Donnie, more than anyone else, must witness what real strength looks like when it is stripped of glamour and ceremony. The act itself becomes a quiet transfer of resolve, pushing Donnie toward a realization that waiting for the right moment is often just another form of fear. This intimate moment between Anita and Donnie does not remain contained within the walls of privacy. It ripples outward, altering the emotional landscape of the Dupree family. Donnie is deeply affected, not simply by the physical reality of her mother's illness, but by the clarity with which Anita faces it. Watching Anita take control forces Donnie to confront her own hesitations, her tendency to endure rather than confront. The weight of responsibility settles differently on her shoulders now, no longer abstract or postponed. Anita's decision becomes a catalyst, compelling Donnie to move, to choose, and to act in ways she has been avoiding. The episode subtly frames this as a turning point. When one woman refuses to be passive, the people around her are no longer allowed the comfort of delay. While Anita's strength is being quietly reaffirmed, Vernon Dupree is engaged in a different kind of vigilance. His warning to Andre Richardson carries the weight of experience and unease, suggesting that danger does not always arrive directly, but often through familiar faces and trusted names. Vernon's concern is deliberately vague, yet heavy with implication. He is not reacting to a single incident, but to a pattern that has begun to feel increasingly unstable. Whether his warning is tied directly to Bill Hamilton or to another, unseen threat, what matters most is the instinct behind it. Vernon senses movement beneath the surface, the kind of movement that precedes collapse. His caution to Andre is less about control and more about survival, a reminder that proximity to power often brings invisible risks. Andre, caught between loyalty, ambition, and the desire to protect his future, is forced to confront the possibility that someone within his orbit may already be working against him. At the same time, Bill Hamilton's storyline unfolds with a tension that feels almost clinical in contrast to the emotional rawness of Anita's arc. Bill is not driven by emotion but by suspicion, and suspicion has become his most reliable companion. The strange results from his blood tests refuse to be dismissed as coincidence, and the lawyer, and him cannot accept uncertainty without pursuing every angle. His determination to uncover the truth is not fueled by fear of illness alone, but by the unsettling sense that his body may have been compromised by design rather than chance. Bill does not initially consider the possibility that someone close to him is responsible. In fact, his trust in Haley remains largely intact, perhaps because acknowledging her potential involvement would require him to confront a betrayal that cuts deeper than any diagnosis. Instead, Bill's mind turns outward, scanning for enemies he already expects to exist. He considers rivals, past grudges, professional adversaries, anyone who might benefit from his weakening. This misdirection becomes both his shield and his blind spot. As Bill investigates further, the irony of his situation sharpens. A man who has spent his career uncovering truths for others now struggles to see what may be unfolding within his own home. His focus on external threats allows the real danger, whatever its source, to remain just beyond his line of sight. The episode plays with this tension carefully, never confirming Bill's suspicions yet steadily tightening the sense that time is running out. Every unanswered question compounds the unease, and every delay in clarity increases the stakes. Bill's refusal to suspect Haley is not framed as ignorance, but as emotional denial, a choice rooted in the need to believe that some alliances remain untouched by corruption. Parallel to these unfolding conflicts, Catherine Kate Richardson receives news that threatens to destabilize what little certainty she has left. The shock is not merely informational, it is existential. Whatever she learns carries implications that force her to reassess her position, her relationships, and possibly her understanding of herself. The timing of this revelation is crucial. As others around her are taking control or searching for hidden truths, Kat is confronted with information she did not seek and cannot ignore. The episode does not immediately reveal how she will respond, but the weight of the news is clear, and the way it disrupts her emotional equilibrium. Kat is no stranger to pressure, yet this moment feels different, as though the ground beneath her has shifted without warning. What makes this episode particularly effective is the way these storylines mirror and contrast one another. Anita's proactive strength stands against Bill's reactive investigation, while Kat's shock represents the unpredictable nature of truth when it arrives uninvited. Vernon's warning hovers over all of it, a reminder that awareness does not always come with answers, and that sometimes the most dangerous threats are the ones we sense but cannot yet name. The narrative weaves these threads together without rushing resolution, allowing tension to build organically through character-driven choices rather than sudden twists. By the end of the episode, it becomes clear that control, or the illusion of it, is the central theme binding these arcs together. Anita claims control over her body and her story. Dani is pushed toward claiming control over her next move. Bill attempts to reclaim control through knowledge, even as his assumptions may be leading him astray. Kat, meanwhile, must decide whether control is something she can still grasp or something she is about to lose entirely. Each character stands at the edge of a decision that will define not just their immediate future, but their role within the fragile ecosystem of Fairmont Crest. Tuesday's episode does not offer easy answers, but it does something far more compelling. It tightens the web. Every action taken, every truth investigated, and every warning issued draws the characters closer to a reckoning that feels both inevitable and deeply personal. As the gates of Fairmont Crest remain closed to the outside world, the real battles are being fought quietly inside, where strength is tested not by spectacle, but by the courage to face what comes next without looking away. Kate Richardson has never been naive about love, but she has always believed quietly, stubbornly, that whatever storms Fairmont Crest could summon, the person she chose would at least be a shelter. not another source of lightning. That belief is exactly what shatters on Tuesday's episode of Beyond the Gates. When Kat receives news so sharp and unexpected, it doesn't feel like information at first, but like a physical blow delivered in the middle of an ordinary breath. The shock is not merely that something happened, but that it happened close to her, within the circle she thought was protected, where loyalty was assumed and boundaries were understood without needing to be spelled out. The revelation hits Kat in the same instant it forces her to reassess everything she has been telling herself about Tomas Navarro, about Eva Thomas, and about the quiet compromises she has made to keep her relationship stable. In a community where reputation is currency and perception is survival, Kat has always been careful about what she allows the world to see. Yet this news threatens to drag her private life into harsh light, the kind that makes every emotion look extreme and every hesitation look like weakness. She doesn't want to be the woman who overreacts, the woman who reads betrayal into every shadow, but she also refuses to become the woman who swallows suspicion until it becomes poison. And that internal war between dignity and rage, between proof and instinct, turns her shock into something more dangerous, certainty that something is wrong. Even if she cannot yet prove how wrong it is, the timing makes everything worse. Only one day earlier, on Monday's episode, Eva Thomas leaned on Tomas in a way that felt, to anyone watching carefully, like a deliberate test of territory disguised as vulnerability. It wasn't necessarily romantic in an obvious way, but it carried the unmistakable weight of intimacy, the kind of closeness that asks for permission without saying the words. The kind of closeness that makes a girlfriend feel as if she is being quietly replaced in the emotional space that matters most. Eva's need, whether genuine or performed, found its easiest landing place in Tomas because he allowed it, because he did not shut it down fast enough, because he chose to be the steady presence she could cling to. Kat is forced to replay what she saw, what she heard, what she felt in her body while her mind tried to stay calm. She remembers the expression on Tomas's face, the way his attention shifted, the way his posture softened for Eva in a manner Kat realizes she hasn't received in weeks. She hates that she noticed these details, hates that her mind catalogued them like evidence, because it means part of her has been preparing for this moment longer than she wanted to admit. Now, when the shocking news arrives, news that leads to conflict with someone she loves, Kat cannot separate the revelation from the memory of Eva leaning into Tomas, as if Kat's claim on him was negotiable. In Kat's mind, the dots connect almost too cleanly, which only intensifies her fury. Neat patterns are comforting only when they lead to safety, and this pattern leads directly to humiliation. The real pain for Kat is not that Eva exists, or that Eva is struggling. It is the possibility that Tomas has been allowing Eva to become a permanent presence, a constant call on his attention, a steady drain on the relationship Kat has been trying to protect. Tomas may tell himself he is helping, that he is being decent, that he is doing what any good man would do when someone is spiraling. But Kat has lived long enough to recognize the danger of that story. "I'm just trying to help" is one of the most seductive excuses in the world, because it dresses emotional intimacy in moral clothing and makes boundaries feel cruel. Kat knows that the moment you become someone's emotional anchor, you are no longer neutral, you are involved, you are invested, you are necessary. And necessity is where love begins to shift, quietly, from one person to another. That is what Kat cannot forgive, especially if she senses that Tomas never intended to confess how deep that involvement has become. The shock she receives on Tuesday does not have to be the final proof of physical betrayal to still feel like betrayal. For Kat, emotional dishonesty is often worse, because it is easier to deny and harder to untangle. It allows the guilty party to claim innocence while the wounded party is painted as paranoid, dramatic, and reasonable. Kat refuses to play that role, and that refusal becomes the spark of conflict that cannot be smoothed over with charm or reassurance. Eva Thomas, meanwhile, is the kind of complication that doesn't arrive like a villain but like a wound that keeps reopening. Whether Eva is genuinely fragile or strategically helpless, she has mastered the art of appearing as if she has nowhere else to go. The danger is that this posture forces everyone around her into a moral dilemma. If they set boundaries, they feel cruel. If they allow closeness, they enable dependence. If they step back, they risk being blamed for whatever Eva does next. Kat recognizes this trap instantly. She can see how easily Eva's presence could make Tomas feel like a protector, a savior, the one man who can stabilize her when she begins to fall. And Kat also sees the darker angle she doesn't want to believe but cannot ignore, that Eva might not just be leaning on Tomas because she needs support, but because she needs leverage. Because she wants to prove she can pull him closer than Kat can. Because she wants Kat to feel safe in her own relationship. Even if Eva never says it out loud, the dynamic itself becomes a quiet contest, with Kat being forced to defend her place against an opponent who insists she isn't even competing. That kind of psychological warfare is exhausting because it has no clear rules, and every response risks making Kat look like the aggressor. The mention of Isaiah Hawthorne only complicates the emotional math further, not because Kat wants another man, but because triangles and quadrangles are rarely about romance alone in Fairmont Crest. They are about power, perception, and the desperate need to feel chosen. If Kat is pulled into a larger tangle involving Tomas and Eva, the mere presence of Isaiah becomes a threat to stability. A reminder that Kat's anger might drive her toward choices she would normally avoid. Isaiah's role, even if currently indirect, represents the possibility that Kat could seek comfort elsewhere, not as revenge, but as proof to herself that she is still desired, still valued, still able to shift the balance when her world begins to tilt. That is the most dangerous type of temptation, the kind that feels like self-respect instead of betrayal. And Kat, who prides herself on clarity, begins to realize how easily a person can rationalize a step they never planned to take if they feel cornered enough. The show doesn't need Kat to act on that temptation immediately for the tension to work. It only needs her to feel it, to recognize it, and to fear what she might do if Tomas keeps pushing her into a space where rage feels like the only language left. When Kat finally confronts Tomas because it becomes inevitable, because silence is no longer possible, the conflict is not just about what happened, but about what Tomas believes he is allowed to keep from her. Kat's anger is fueled by something deeper than jealousy, the sense that Tomas has been making decisions about her emotional reality without her consent, deciding what she can handle, deciding what she should know, deciding when the truth is necessary. That is not love to Kat, that is control disguised as protection. Tomas may try to explain, may insist he was only being kind, may argue that Eva needed someone and he didn't want to abandon her. But Kat hears the subtext in every justification, that Eva's needs were urgent, and Kat's feelings were manageable, that Eva's crisis required immediate attention, and Kat could be asked to wait, that Eva's pain was a fire, and Kat's discomfort was smoke. The more Tomas speaks from that place, the more Kat's shock turns into something colder and more precise. She begins to understand that the greatest threat is not Eva, but the way Tomas responds to Eva, the way he prioritizes, the way he hides, the way he assumes Kat will adapt. Kat is not built to adapt to disrespect, and she is not willing to be the woman who stays quiet just to keep a man comfortable. And yet, for all her fury, Kat is not a simple character driven only by pride. She feels the grief underneath her anger, the grief of realizing she may have been clinging to an image of Tomas that isn't entirely real. She thought she knew where she stood with him. She thought their relationship had boundaries strong enough to withstand outsiders. Now she is forced to confront the humiliating possibility that while she was building stability, someone else was quietly building influence. The shock she receives on Tuesday does not just ignite conflict with Tomas, it creates conflict inside Kat herself, because she has to decide what she is willing to tolerate, what she is willing to fight for, and what she might need to walk away from if the foundation is already cracked. The episode doesn't require a final breakup to be devastating. It only requires Kat to feel the shift in her own heart, that subtle movement away from trust, that moment when love begins to reclassify itself as risk. By the time the dust settles, the audience is left with a question that feels bigger than gossip and bigger than romance. Are we watching a love quadrangle forming between Kat, Tomas, Eva, and Isaiah, or are we watching something more psychologically brutal, the slow dismantling of trust through small? The truth is that both can be happening at once. In Fairmont Crest, emotional entanglements rarely stay contained, they become alliances, weapons, and reputational landmines. Kat's shock is only the beginning, because once a woman like Kat feels publicly threatened, she doesn't just react, she strategizes. And as Tomas tries to keep his world from exploding, and Eva continues to position herself close enough to matter, and Isaiah's presence lingers like a door Kat could open if she wants to prove she still has control, the stage is set for an escalation that won't be resolved by apologies or reassurance. The real hook is this: Kat's anger is not a storm that will pass, it is a warning that she is about to make a decision, and whatever choice she makes next will not just punish someone else. It will redefine who she is willing to be when love stops feeling safe.